Hi there, welcome to the second video looking at the steam gauge, not the glass cockpit version, the steam gauge version of the Cessna 172, and particularly this one's going to look at the G530. I had intended to go down this route and make this video, but I wanted to be able to show you what you can do with the X-Touch to simulate the 530 without using any scripts, just using Microsoft's input events now. And if that's all you want to do, this is a very quick and easy way of getting this Garmin here, this one here that's in this cockpit, programmed up. The techniques will work for a lot of things, and you may want to be able to use this in other aircraft, even if you haven't got this particular one. So it's got a 530, it's got a 430, which is a very similar device. There's a few functions missing from it, but the programming of the two are pretty much the same. Quick close-up look at the 530 if you've not seen it before. On the left-hand side here, we've got stacked rotaries, one inside the other, and the big one on the outside changes the frequency of, well, by default it changes the COM frequency, the megahertz, and the small one, the kilohertz. But by pressing this button on the end here, it toggles over to your navigation radios, the V-lock as they've called it here. It's the ones that would tune into VORs. So it's the same buttons. It does the megahertz and kilohertz, but for the navigation radios. So this one toggles it backwards and forwards between the two. In fact, what it does is it changes the standby frequency, not the active frequency. So you've got these buttons here to change the standby to become active for the communications and for the navigation radios. So we'll be emulating those. And on this side here, you've got the GPS functions. This one here steps you through the major functions that the GPS does, and this one here steps you through the pages within those menu systems. When you want to make an input into them, you click on here to activate a cursor, or press it again to deactivate the cursor. And so along here, you've got the ability to zoom in and zoom out on the map, to fly direct to a waypoint, bring up a menu system, to clear your entries, or to confirm an entry. So if you started to type in a waypoint you want to get to, click on enter to enter it. And the buttons along here, the CDI is linked to the autopilot, really. It's the source of your navigation, where it's getting information either from your GPS system or from your nav radios. The VORs, so that switches between the two. OBS is a whole video in its own right. Not many people use it, but it's quite useful for flying non-precision approaches and things like that. Messages, occasionally they come up. They're not particularly emulated in this simulation, but we'll have the button for completeness. Flight plan, obviously, we need to create flight plans within here. VNAV. And procedures. If you want to fly a particular ILS approach or something like that, that's where we need to enter the procedures. So that's what we're going to emulate. So I kind of looked at the layout that we can do without using any scripts, just allocating one rotary for megahertz increase and decrease, kilohertz increase and decrease, and then this push button that we would have here on the end, putting that when we press that, so it swaps between comms and nav. And then we've got the same here with the GPS, the outer and the inner rotaries, pressing on the end to get the cursor working. We need the button for the comms swap and the nav swap, frequency swap from standby to active. Up to you where you put them. I put them next to each other, but you could put one underneath the other, which gives you the ability to sort of shuffle these buttons up if that is how you prefer your layout. And these are just the buttons that were across here, just in the same order, and the ones that were down the side, just changing the vertical layout to the horizontal layout. So that's fine. The disadvantage with this system is that you've actually used up a fair amount of what's available to you in layer A. There's plenty. This layer B is unused. There's plenty if you just want the 530 set up. But if you wanted other devices, you wanted to have the transponder and autopilots and functions, you've used up a fair amount of the rotaries. So in a later video, in fact the next video, I'll be showing you how we can do this and compress this down to use fewer buttons, particularly if you wanted to add the 430, which has got the same functions on it, but if you wanted it without scripting, you're probably going to have to use layer B and duplicate everything onto layer B, which is the ones in blue. And you can see we've used a lot of the buttons up. So what I'll be looking at in the next video is how you can do everything all on layer A with having one button that swaps us between talking to the 430 or the 530. So it does involve a fair amount of scripting to make it work, but it's not hard scripting. But if this is all you need, then follow this one through. So let's get into the cockpits and we'll zoom in so we can actually see the device that we're talking about here. I'm just going to bring this back to its kind of default position, if I can. Don't quite know where we are with that. Okay, so this is the default. This is what the it will be at normally. It has the map up and visible for you. Let's bring in Axis and Ohs. So it's absolutely clear. There's no allocations here at all. We're going to go right from scratch. And I'll bring in a webcam up here so you can see the rotaries that I turn, the buttons I press. You can see what's going on there. So let's start with this side here. I want to do the outer rotary here, which would be the one that affects the megahertz frequency change. And I want to use the Microsoft input events, which are kind of a newish feature. And I think they're specific to the aircraft that you've got loaded at the time. I think it just brings up the ones that are relevant to the plane you're actually currently flying. So they've called it the AS 530 or 430. So I'm going to use that to filter. You could just filter for the 530, but I've already got some of my scripts programmed in for a 530, and when I filter, it'll bring those up and kind of cloud the issues a little bit. This is what's actually provided as Scratch. So I'm looking at my input events here, and what I want to look at is this one here. It's the COM VLOC, because it does either the comms or the nav radio megahertz, and that is the increase version. So if I take this rotary here and turn it clockwise, you'll see that it noticed which control I've switched, which device, which control, and the fact I've turned it to the right. You've got to be a bit careful with this. If you if I come out of that and cancel that again and just go back in and show you what I'm talking about. So bring that filter up again, the AS 530 filter, allocating the megahertz. When I first turn this knob, it just knows I've clicked it once. It doesn't know which way I'm going. It's not until it's seen 2 clicks in the same direction that it knows whether you've turned it right or left. So at least 2 clicks in that direction. Click on add, and that's it. So what should happen now is when I turn this knob here, it should emulate this one going clockwise, and let's get it set up as standard. You'll see that the comms megahertz is increasing. Now we'll do the decrease version. So we're going to use exactly the same command, but this time I'm going to roll this here to -1, and you can do it with the roll the wheel on the mouse, or you can double click and type in -1, and then we'll just allocate that. And what we should see now happen is it should go in both directions, decrease and increase, and you'll also see that the animation here is working. Let's do the same for the inner, for the kilohertz. So kilohertz one, just the standard increase, and now we'll do the same for the decrease. So this one again, we need to roll that to -1, allocate it, and test it. So we can see animation working and the digits moving in the correct direction. So we'll now do the push button on the end of here. Pressing the button on the end here, just clicking that down, and we'll just check as we press that, this should jump from comms to VLOC and back again, and it does. Same procedure here then for the GPS rotaries. So we've got GPS outer, and that's already set for increase, so we just turn that, add, and we'll just do the decrease version. And same again for the inner. Change that to -1, and then we want the cursor on the push button on the end of it. There's cursor, press the button and click add. So the rotary is done. Let's do the swaps here now. So com swap is on this button here. Nav swap, notice they call it the V-lock on here, but it's the nav swap on here. And we'll just check those out. That's the comms swapping happening from standby to active. We'll do the same with the nav, and that's working fine. Now it's just a question of working our way across these buttons here. So I want this CDI button. Then the OBS, message, and these are all in alphabetical order, so they're really easy to find. Flight plan, then the VNav, and the procedure. And now just work our way down here with the range. So the range zoom is similar to the megahertz and kilohertz. So that's the range in one direction. And to make the range work in the opposite direction, we have to change that figure to -1. So we change this down to the -1, allocate that to the next button across. I will just check that's working properly. So range in that direction and range in that direction. So that's working absolutely fine. Direct to. Menus next. And the next one is clear. We'll talk about that a bit after I've demonstrated a few things. So let's add the clear button in. And the last one is the enter button. Okay, so let's quickly demonstrate a few little bits and pieces here. So if I turn the GPS outer button, you can see that it steps through the various functions that are available to you, and within that, if we use the inner button, we can step through the sort of sub pages that are within there. And if we go into flight plan, and let's bring up the cursor, which is pressing this button here, we can now sort of start to enter waypoints. Let's go to EGLL, for instance. If I press the clear button here, nothing much happens, and I sort of step back through here, and I can go back and try the entry again. And then again, press the clear button, and it steps back. One of the functions that is in here, if I just turn the cursor off for a second, is it says here default nav. If you hold that button down on here for a few seconds and then let go, it takes you back. If you get lost in the system, it takes you back to your nav page. So the clear button really should have two functions to it. One is a short press, which just clears the input you're making. But there's also this long click that takes you back. It should take you back to the default nav view if you kind of get lost in the system. So let's sort of just move into a new page here somewhere. If I press the clear button, we'll just do it on here once. So if we just click on here, nothing much happens. But if I hold it down for a couple of seconds, it should take me back to the nav page wherever I am. So I want to emulate that onto this button here. So it's another function of that clear button, and there's this long click. I want the long click to be somewhere around a second long, so we'll put 1,000 milliseconds in there. But it's the same command, but I think it's a 0. Let's try it with a 0. Let's click on there. So do the same as we did before. We'll go into somewhere into this system here. A short click on clear doesn't take us anywhere, but if we hold it down for a second, that takes us back to the nav page. So we've got that long click in here. So really that's it. We've kind of emulated every button. If we've just pressed the CDI, we'll see it change. OBS mode working. There aren't any messages. Into flight plan and back out again. The VNAV procedures. So that everything seems to be working now. Pressing the direct to button. That's right, I need to press clear. Is he going to let me? There we go. And we'll turn that cursor off. There we go. So, yeah. That's the allocation. If you wanted to do the 430, what you would need to do is to switch this over to bank B and do all the same inputs again, but this time change your filter. So you're picking up the 430 commands. And there'll be the 430 versions of the same. So that's easy. And then at the end of it all, having done your assignments, probably a good idea to save that as a template. So save that current setup as a template so that you can use it again in other aircraft. Okay, I hope that's been helpful. And I will show you how you can use scripts to compress this down and make it use fewer buttons and fewer rotaries in the next video.